Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be working on the Corvette yet again, continuing our last video where we had showed you the Swaybars. We're actually going to reveal why we decided to go ahead and pick up that new set of Swaybars, because I said there's a secret project going on. And what that project is basically we have the stock C7 ZR1 or the Z06 front brake cooling kit for a C7. And then obviously you can see our instructions from Ryan with his Swaybar kit. And then over here, you guys can see a retrofit kit for a C6 that allows you to install the C7 ZR1 cooling brake kit onto a C6. And what's going to allow us to do that are these 3D printed parts from Syndicate Engineering. So we've actually had some of these parts for maybe 4 or 5 years. It's been quite a while. I don't remember exactly when we ordered them. I think it might have been during COVID, so like 2020, 2021. Basically, when we did the C7 front bumper, I had ordered the brake ducts and everything here. I had also ordered the control arm kit that goes on to the control arms. I had seen one person retrofit these onto a C6. I don't remember exactly what he did, but he had to cut a couple things up, used a giant zip tie, if I remember correctly, and he was able to install the kit. Well, I was like, that's fine. I did mock one of these up a really long time ago, and I remember the little brake deflector here, this piece right here, that would not fit with the FOT Racing Swaybars. So that's kind of what led us down to start looking into this kit. I knew Ryan had a kit that was designed after the stock Swaybars, so I was like, all right, well, that's kind of leading us down the right direction. And then Syndicate Engineering just came out with this kit probably a few months ago, but they kind of re-released it and re-engineered it. I think what they did, I think they used a stronger material. And what they basically did is they replaced the C7 specific parts. So these two parts down here, you're gonna replace that with the 3D printed part instead of the injection molded plastic stuff that the Chevrolet kit came with. So you guys can see over here, you know, basically this piece and this piece almost look identical. But obviously you guys can see it's engineered a little bit different because the mounting tabs are slightly different. So basically what Syndicate Engineering did was take the GM design, add an extra tab to it, and allowed us to go ahead and have a bolt-on solution for the C7 brake duct kit. Also, I worked with the owner of Syndicate Engineering. I'll be honest, I don't remember his name. I'll include it down below. But I sent him an email saying, hey, I think I have the full kit. I took a picture of everything that I had with the brake duct kit. I sent it to him, and he's like, oh, hey, you don't need to order the full kit. So he was able to sell me just the parts that I needed. So basically these 3D printed parts over here, those 4 pieces. And I want to say that kit was around $100. So that's not too terrible for a custom 3D printed kit. And I think shipping might have been like $10, $15, something like that. So about $100 plus shipping. And we now have a, we'll call it plug and play bolt-on affair with using the C7 kit, using the After Dark Speed Swaybar arms, and using the Syndicate Engineering kit. And that will basically allow us to go ahead, take the C6ZR1 little control arm flaps off, install this kit, and finally get some more stuff out of the garage. Also, shout out to Shane Greenwood. If he hadn't posted in the Corvette track group, basically what he did was he kind of took his own version of the C7 brake ducts and that little shield that goes on the control arm. He kind of did his own thing, but he didn't want to rip off Syndicate Engineering. So he's the one that pointed me the direction of Syndicate. And so that's how I ended up finding out about those basically 3D printed pieces that are going to adapt the C7 kit onto a C6. So you just saw us drop the FOT sway bar. And here's the front bar compared to the After Dark Speed bar. The FOT is a little bit thicker. Yeah, you can tell it's just got a little bit more girth to it. So Ryan's sway bar is a little bit smaller, but you guys can see what I'm talking about as in how this is mounted. The arms run similarly, but see where the FOT arms go straight back. Then they have the end links. Ryan's bar kind of goes down, up, and then to the left. Well, the FOT was relying on a straight, up and down. Yeah, let's go ahead, read the instructions. I need to lube up the bushings that Ryan provided. All right, guys, I found the suspension grease kit from Energy Suspension. I'm almost embarrassed by the copyright date on the package. I just have to show you. So if you guys can read that, I don't know if it's going to focus, but it says copyright 2003. Yeah, 2003 was my junior year of college. I would have been driving my 1994 Chevy Cavalier. I have a picture of that here. I still have some of those. I don't think I had picked up my third Beretta at that point. But yeah, this was a very long time ago, and that's quite the throwback. I know I hold on to things, but damn, almost 23 years later, I'm still using the grease that I had back in college. That is insane. But yeah, let's go ahead and use some of the stuff up and maybe throw the package out when we're done. But yeah, that is definitely a throwback. Oh, and to put this into perspective, I didn't buy the Corvette until 2007. So I am on 19 years of owning the Corvette. 20 years will be 2027. And obviously we've done a lot of stuff with the Corvette over the years. But yeah, having grease from 2003, that's insane. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead, lube this up. And basically just what you're going to want to do is get enough grease on the inside of this thing to spread it around with your finger. And because you basically, the thing with poly bushings is you don't want them to squeak. And unfortunately, the Corvette sway bars, the way they're designed, they're not greasable. I mean, I guess the factory little half circle mount that they use, that you could potentially put a grease fitting in there, but then you'd have to drill a hole through this. And yeah, it's just not something you want to deal with. So you guys will be able to see, I got plenty of the grease on here. Spread it in around with your fingers. And you're really only going to want to, lubricate the inside of the bar. I mean, you could put it on the outside, but I honestly don't think it's going to make a difference. I have not had any grease or anything like that on the... I'm not even sure if they're OEM. The bushings that were on the FOT sway bar, I don't know where those came from. So, I don't think you really have to worry about that. But yeah, so let's go ahead. We'll finish lubing these up with potentially grease from 2003, and we should be good to go. Oh, and if you guys are wondering, this is synthetic, so this isn't like a grease that's going to break down and get all watery. If this was like a factory style grease that you just buy from, say, AutoZone, a parts store or whatever, yeah, that stuff breaks down and gets watery. With this being fully synthetic, whatever the material they make it out of, I'm not worried about anything breaking down over those 20 years. Like I said, this stuff is coming out exactly as you would expect. And yeah, so go ahead, get this one lubed up as well, and we should be good to go. Oh, and thankfully Ryan has a split in the bushing, as you guys can see there. So you're not trying to hammer this thing on the end of the sway bar. Then you're going to get grease all over the powder-coated bar up until the point that you need to stop. And then, you don't have to worry about that. With this having a split in it, just split it open, put it over the bar, clamp it, grab the factory clamps, mounts, and mount it up in the chassis. So I think we're good here. Let's go ahead, grab the sway bar, we'll get that installed, and we'll continue the project. Alright guys, you can see we have the sway bar fully installed. The main bolts that go into the subframe, those are a 13mm. They torque down to 43 foot-pounds. And then for the end links over here, the gold top part goes to the top, the threaded rod goes to the bottom. That's going to torque to 55 foot-pounds. The nylock nut is an 18mm. Then if you look in the middle of the fitting, you will actually see a, well, it almost looks like a bolt, but that actually is a spot for you to put a wrench on. That is a 17mm. So 17mm, 18mm wrench, and torque that down to 55 foot-pounds top and bottom. And that is going to be a wrap on the front install. Alright guys, I jumped ahead on this driver's side. I wanted to mock everything up before we drilled any holes in the lower control arm, and I wanted to make sure that this kit was going to fit. And as far as I can tell, everything looks like it's going to be just fine. The only thing I'm going to modify, I am going to trim this brake duct right here. It is slightly touching the sway bar by like, I don't know, just a little bit. And so I'm going to trim that off. That way we don't have the sharp pointy edge pushing into the sway bar. Alright guys, we have finished up the driver's side. I actually have the wheel back installed. And over here on the passenger side, we're just going to give you a brief rundown on how this is going to bolt together. So basically we're going to take our 3D printed pieces. You are going to screw them together with, there's a small Torx bit. The size on that Torx bit is going to be, I think it's a 10? No, it's a 20. So it's a T20 Torx. There's going to be 3 bolts that you put in here with the Torx set on there. Connect that to this piece. You're going to connect this piece to the piece from GM. And this piece from GM is going to sit back here behind the sway bar and the control arm. This duct toward me, that'll go toward the rotor. And then how this all ties together is this deflector has a bolt down here on the bottom. It has a bolt here on the top, and then it's got a thumb screw here in the middle. And you're basically going to connect that top connector to here, to the duct. This bottom piece right here, and then that bottom piece will connect to the gold fitting right there. That is a small 10mm headed bolt. We're going to connect that there. And then this silver piece, we're going to have to drill a small hole in the control arm. I believe we're going to need a 11/64 size drill bit, and then they provide you a tap for that. So we're going to go ahead, put this all mocked up, and then drill it, and then we'll be done. It doesn't take long. We're probably 30 minutes total. Alright, so these are all the pieces screwed together, basically, like I said. On the bottom here, you've got the 2 3D printed pieces bolted together. You slide on the GM brake duct piece, and then you attach that to the top of the deflector, and the very bottom of the deflector, that screws in there. And then this silver fitting right here, that's where we're going to drill into the lower control arm and, you know, put our last piece of hardware in. And basically how this is going to work, this little scoop down here at the bottom, it's going to scoop up air, pick it up, go through the brake duct, and then it's going to come out here into the back of the rotor. Alright guys, we got the 3D printed bracket bolted together. I've not fully snugged it down, but you guys can see the Torx bit right there. That's that T20 we were talking about. That has been sandwiched on both sides of the control arm. Hopefully you can see that. And then over here on the top, I have clipped in the GM brake ducts so you guys can see that. That'll basically feed air from here to the back of the rotor. I think there might even be like a GM racing kit that actually has some kind of metal piece that goes between the back of the rotor and the duct. I just don't remember if that is readily available. I think it was available at one time, but I think it is like a track day only thing. But the rest of this kit you can leave on the car. But if I remember correctly, for that track day only kit, you have to take the whole wheel hub off to take that adapter off. It's something like that. That's why I never bought that. I'm like, yeah, I don't need that. And then for the last piece of this is going to be the deflector itself. So you guys are gonna sneak that in and try to hang it off the bolt that's holding in the sway bar, but basically connected at the top, connected at the bottom. So we got the deflector installed, we got the top piece bolted down, we've got the little thumb screw that we showed you earlier, then the very bottom piece that we showed you just a minute ago. Alright guys, you'll see we're able to slide this in and out. So I'm going to make a very distinct clicking sound. Alright, so that's pushed in. You guys hear that click? Well, that is the 3D printed piece actually hitting the subframe. And we definitely don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this back ever so slightly, and we get probably 1/8 of an inch clearance, maybe a little bit more. So you guys can see that there, that we're no longer hitting here, and it's going to be the same thing on this inner flange here. We're not hitting there. So I just want to show you that again. You know, you hear that? That is the 3D printed box hitting the subframe. We don't want that. Pull it in a little bit, and that should be about all you're going to need. One thing to note, I did have to move my ABS brake sensor. I did have it pointing straight out. I don't know if that's the way it's properly supposed to be ran, but it was running into the duct. For the driver's side, I didn't have that problem. Maybe I have it ran slightly different, I don't know, but I just moved it from going that way to on top, and it looks like everything's gonna clear now. So, and I've been playing with the suspension a little bit, and like I said, turning everything, lifting it, I think we should be good to go. If you guys can see between the tire and the carbon ceramic disc, you guys can see actually both the deflector and the new sway bar. Here's another better look at that. I do have one last piece of advice. If you guys have a smaller wheel than a 19 up front, you may have to trim the bottom of that deflector. I did see on Syndicate's instructions where you may have to cut that, so just an FYI. The deflector is actually the same exact size as our carbon ceramic rotor, so unless we go down in a brake size, we'll never have an issue with that. So now that we've finished up the front, it's time to do the rear. Pretty much going to be the same thing as the front. We're going to go ahead and remove the stock sway bar, so disconnect the end links, disconnect the mounts, pull the little clamshell mounts out, grab our new sway bar, lube up the new bushings that we have, put them in the mounts, put them in, grab the new end links, install those, and we should be good to go. So you can see we have the rear sway bar pulled out. I was actually able to remove that without having to take the wheels off, so thankfully the back of the car has plenty of room. Take the 4 bolts out for the mounts, 2 bolts out on each end link, and that thing literally dropped right down. Now, I had mentioned bushings and spacers. Ryan's kit actually comes with its own set of spacers, but those spacers are a different width than mine. And I actually have thicker spacers because my rear sway bar, this FOT sway bar, and Ryan's rear tie rod kit, tow rod, whatever you want to call it, it's tie rod to me, they were actually hitting. So I did have to space out the sway bar a little bit to make sure that the rear sway bar and that tie rod kit didn't hit. Well, the problem is, I don't know if I have the factory bolts that have the correct length to use Ryan's spacer. Now, I will go ahead and try to use Ryan's spacers in the hardware that I have. I could grab a bolt and try to find it in my bolt collection. I probably have them, but I'm just not sure. So as you just saw, we did get the rear sway bar installed, obviously after dark speed, and everything went in pretty easily. The end links here, they torque down same as the front, 55 foot-pounds. The nut is going to be an 18 millimeter. Then the little wrench that you need to put on here so you can tighten it, that is a 16 millimeter. The back bolts here are a 19 for top and bottom. The bottom tightens down to 70 foot-pounds. The top tightens down to 49 foot-pounds. And that is basically going to be it for your After Dark Speed rear sway bar. As far as hardware, we used all the stock hardware for the bottom, the nut, the bolt that goes through the lower control arm. The hardware that comes with the end links, use all that with the kit from Ryan. And then the top, now I already had the longer hardware in here and we were able to reuse that. So you guys should be able to use the stock bolt, but like I said, I already had these longer bolts. I put them in there and everything torqued down and fit just fine. So that is going to be a wrap on the After Dark Speed sway bar install, as well as the C7 front brake aero cooling kit, as well as the parts from Syndicate Engineering. We had really no problems with anything today, which was kind of shocking. But yeah, everything pretty much bolted on without any major issue. As far as final adjustment, if I remember correctly from the days that we installed the Fott Racing sway bars, basically they make noise. Those end links will make noise going side to side, and you can adjust them until finally they stop making noise. I think that's how the Fott Racing sway bars adjust out, and I'm pretty sure the After Dark Speed kit will be the same. They'll probably be noisy until you adjust them either one way or the other, get them adjusted properly, and they will quiet down. But yeah, that's going to be about it. If you guys liked today's video, hit that like button. If you want to follow along with the rest of this build, the suspension, the engine, the 427, hit that subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications. And if you guys want to help support the channel, check out all the links down below. We'll try to get you some links for Amazon, at least some of the stuff that we use, tools, maybe sockets. Maybe we could find an energy suspension grease. If we do find that on Amazon, I doubt it'll be 20 years old like our stuff is, but that stuff should work fine. And as far as the sway bars, I'm going to have that listed on our website, BonecrrusherSS.com. Go to the used auto parts section. That will link you over to eBay, and that's where they'll be. They'll also be on Facebook locally, and that is just a good way to help support the channel and also gets crap out of my shop. And everything that we make from parts, used parts and selling and shipping and all that, it always goes back into either buying new parts for the cars, buying stuff for the shop and all that. So that is, it's a win-win. A, I get stuff out of my shop, and B, it gets me some extra cash flow to help buy more parts. So, and that's going to be it. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.